Hello, writers, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live episode, writing my novel number 23, The Process of Questions. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything of Writing for Screens, a YouTube channel that I have created to try to take some of the tools and skills and insights that I gained during a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. On my way out of the business, I wanted to leave behind some of the stuff I had to figure out for myself in some way that might be useful to you as you figure things out for yourself. I do not have a system. I do not have a plan. There are no rules. Anyone who tells you there's only one way to do things is mistaken at best. All I can tell you is these are some things that I figured out for myself. Maybe they are useful for you. You try them out because you have to figure out your way of writing for your type of story, for your type of life, for your type of career. These are all things that you have to figure out for yourself. No one can do it for you, and it will not be like anyone else's. That's the big secret. Every artist must make their own path. That's the big thing that I have to teach you. In order to teach it, I have come up with here. This is a screen grab of the channel main page, Writing for Screens. If you look down towards the bottom of it, you will see a bunch of playlists. Here's a close-up of the first 3 playlists, if you scroll down, and they are Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These 3 playlists comprise about 50 10-ish minute videos. Each one of them is a lesson that I worked on to try and bring down to very simple things that you can think about, try, work out for yourself, just ways to look at things, things to try, ways to do things, ways to understand them. This is basically everything I know. If all you did was watch these 50 videos, you would really have everything I've got to give. But since people also like other stuff, I do live streams every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time if I can make it. Every time I do it, there's a different topic. Today's topic is about writing my novel, because that's what I'm doing now that I am retired from screenwriting. So what I am going to do today is talk about that a little bit and get into 2 main topics. One of which is, just want to break down, I recently worked out a scene that I had a rough draft of, but it wasn't very good. And I want to show you the steps I took, the questions I asked in order to go from not a very good scene to a scene that I can write, the scene that I know that will work. I thought that was an interesting nuts and bolts kind of thing. And then on a much bigger topic, I've been thinking about changing a drastic element of the novel, which I will talk about later. It's about quotation marks. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, some hellos. Hello, Sonia. Hello, Michael. And hello, Mark Burton. Do you have a video on how to enhance a sequel over a first story? I don't. I have not even given that any thought, but I will give some thought later, talk to you about it later after I've done. Today's mainly talking about my novel. Let's get into it. So we're talking about my novel, The Process of Questions. I'm going to very briefly just bring up my actual working notes. This is, here we go. All right, here's the deal. So this is just my actual working notes from a couple days ago. On February 10th, what I do is every day I've got, if you see over to the left here, in the left-hand column, it says work journal, and then below that, there's the text. So every day when I'm working, I open up a little document, if I have anything to ask myself, and I just talk to myself. So here, what we're doing is the end of Notebook 2 is the scene I'm talking about. There's a scene when Tom goes to the loft and decides to break in. So I'm just saying, like, okay, this is what we're talking about. And the question is, why do I need them to talk? These 2 guys talk. They've been talking for much of this whole sequence of scenes that I've got over here on the left. This is all the way down here. That's it. Scene 31 of this section of the story. So the question is, why do we need them to talk? Why not just have Charlie refusing to answer the door or briefly get lost? There has to be something specific that provokes Tom. So let's talk about this for a second. The point of this scene is that the artist Charlie, the character Charlie, who's a painter, has locked himself away, has cut off communication, and his friend Tom, semi-friend, is concerned about him, is concerned, frankly, that he's losing his mind. And what Charlie has been doing, actually, is essentially inventing abstract expressionist painting 10 years before anyone else does, but no one will ever see it. So that's the gimmick of this story. That is the trick of this story. And what's happening in this exact scene is Charlie is doing his paintings. He has broken through. He has figured out his artistic vision, and he won't let anyone see. He's just working 24/7. Tom is worried about him, goes by a couple times, can't get Charlie to talk to him. So Tom breaks into Charlie's loft, and he sees these paintings. And basically what he sees is stuff that's essentially the same style as Jackson Pollock, as Mark Rothko. He sees abstract expressionism, and he does not get it at all. He thinks his friend has had a mental breakdown. So that's the point of this scene. This scene is whatever is going to make Tom want to go to the extreme of breaking into his friend's loft when his friend is not there to see if things are okay. That is the point of this story. So the point of this chapter, this scene. So what I'm saying is here, there has to be something specific that provokes Tom. And I'm thinking, well, if he's not answering the door and Tom knows he's there, he can see his lights on sometimes. And Tom sees that Charlie is starving, because this is one of the things that's happening. Charlie is so intent on his work that he is taking all his money and buying paints and not buying food, and he's literally starving artist. So the question becomes, does Tom talk to him at all? That's the question. It's like, I've got this scene. I need something where Tom goes to Charlie and says like, hey man, you okay? And does Charlie say something that provokes him or concerns him? Or what if Charlie just won't talk to him at all? But then I realized it does seem like he has to hear from Charlie himself that it is a choice he is making to pay for paints. In other words, he is going to, he needs to hear that Charlie is actually saying, no, my art is so important to me right now. I'm not going to eat. I don't need to eat. I need to paint. And Tom's like, uh-oh, we need to get this guy some help. So the question is, if he seems to need to hear it from Charlie, they have to talk. So I'm thinking, well, when can they talk? Because Tom cannot be allowed into the studio. If Tom is allowed into the studio, then he'll see the art, and that will ruin the whole breakthrough of this this section of the story, this major turning point halfway through the story. So the question is, if Tom has to hear it, then Charlie has to come out. Okay, he has to talk to him. So, but Charlie, why would Charlie come out? I mean, I guess Tom knocks on his door, says, hey, Charlie, can I talk to you? And Charlie's like, all right. And he slips out and they talk in the stairway. That just seemed dull. It seemed exposition-y and undramatic and mentally boring. So I was thinking, like, does Tom need to wait until he goes out? How often does he go out? Does they catch him on the sidewalk? So what I want to talk about here is the process of asking these questions. In other words, I know what I need to accomplish, which is Tom has to be provoked to break into Charlie's loft. That is the goal, the point, the whole meaning of this moment in the story. So the question then is how, why, when, what those, all those things are what it's about. So what I do is I ask questions. So does Tom talk to him at all? Does he wait till he goes out? And then one of the other things that's happening here is Tom is going to see that there's an eviction notice. In other words, in order to provoke Tom to say, like, Charlie's fallen apart, Charlie is being evicted from his loft. He's got this loft, that he doesn't pay rent on because he works as the building superintendent for this loft building. It's like a trade-off. The landlord says, you can have one of these lofts, but you have to take care of the coal and all the plumbing and you have to take care of the place. Charlie has stopped doing his job, and so the landlord is trying to evict him. So the question then is, if Tom sees this eviction notice, what does he do? Because is Charlie going to get evicted? We don't want that. We need him to stay in the loft for the story. So once again, these are all questions. And what I wanted to talk to you about is the process. So I got to the idea, I got to these questions, but by the end of my work session on the 10th, I guess that was Monday, I didn't really have it. I just had these questions. So on Tuesday, I start again and I go, okay, I go back to the questions. What specifically provokes Tom to break in? Not answering the door, seeing he is starving, hearing and this eviction notice. Okay, so the question is, and I just copied all these questions from the day before. I literally copied and pasted them into the top of my new session to say, all right, what do I have to do here? I have to answer these questions. So the question was, does Tom pay Charlie's rent in order to save him? But it isn't being rented for money, so that doesn't work. So once again, the question is this eviction notice worth being put in? Kind of got sidetracked onto that. And I thought, the point is, I like the eviction notice because it's a pressure, which is going to provoke Tom to break into the place. And that is going to provoke Tom to reach out to this other person, Billy, Charlie's girlfriend, who is very, very rich, but has broken up with him and gone to Europe. So the point of this eviction notice and seeing these crazy paintings is going to be that Tom reaches out. He sends messages to Billy saying, Charlie is cracking up. You have to come home. All right. So I thought, well, what about this? Tom goes to the loft and bangs on Charlie's door. Charlie won't answer. So he goes away. He comes back a few days later. This time, the eviction notice is up. So we know that the eviction notice is new, which means that there's a certain amount of time before he actually gets evicted. So I thought, if this is, I know in the story that Billy is going to come back at the beginning of September. So if this is the end of August, it's a week or two, that's fine. That'll work. So I have an answer. We are in August. Billy comes back. The eviction notice has just gone up. Okay, so then I say to myself, all right, so then. I literally do. This is me. These are my actual notes. This is how I talk to myself on paper. So the question is, in order for Tom to talk to Charlie, I go back to the question, does Tom just wait for Charlie to go out? Thing is, Charlie, we are establishing that Charlie is so riveted on his painting, he doesn't even eat. He's not going to go out to a restaurant. He's not going to go out shopping. He doesn't have any money. Why would Charlie go out? So the answer is he doesn't. The answer is this is not making sense. So I think it through and I say, okay, after the eviction, he sees the eviction notice, he bangs again, and they talk through the door. That's my new idea. He doesn't talk to him out on the street. He just talks to him through the door, which is kind of emotionally more powerful. The idea that Charlie is like locked into this loft where he won't deal with the world until he has solved his artistic problem, and Tom is talking to him through the door, this big metal sliding door that the loft has. I thought that was a good solution. So now I've got an idea. Tom goes to the place, he bangs, Charlie won't answer. It bugs him. He comes back a day or two later. There's an eviction notice on the door. He bangs again and he won't stop until Charlie talks to him. Charlie won't open the door, but he talks to him through the door. Okay, now we've gotten it into really clear, dramatic steps and a dramatic moment, and they're very simple. That's why that was good. But the question is, how I then say, well, how does Tom know that Charlie goes out so he can break in? If Charlie's never leaving the loft, how can Tom break in and see the stuff? Charlie will be there. Charlie will see him. So I ask questions. Does he just wait? Like he stakes out the place and waits for Charlie to go out? but that seems likely, but it's only going to work if Charlie goes out. And Charlie, we have just established, is not going out. He's starving to death. He's intensely painting. He's not letting himself. And then I thought, and literally I typed, you can see I typed, oh, wait. Okay. Oh, wait. What if Charlie asks Tom for money, for paints? He's like, hey, man, can you just give me a little bit of money? Loan me. I'll pay you back. And Tom slips a few dollars, what he has, under the door. And of course, as soon as Charlie is done, as soon as he can, Charlie's going to take that money and go out to buy more paint, because that's what Charlie's obsessed with. This is all of a sudden, I have gone from having a rough idea that something has to provoke Tom, but it all seemed very boring. It seemed like it was just sort of like exposition. Okay, Tom goes and they talk. It wasn't a scene, but now there's actually a set of steps. Tom goes, he bangs on the door, Charlie won't answer. Tom is really worried now. He comes back a day or two later, there's an eviction notice. He bangs and he won't stop until Charlie talks to him, but Charlie won't open the door. He'll only talk through the door. But what Charlie's saying is, it's okay, it's great. I am so happy. I am inspired. It's great. I don't want to show anyone until it's finished. So now Tom is like, maybe he's okay. And then Charlie says, listen, can you give me any money for paints? It's like an addict asking for a fix. Tom gives him the money, but then he waits, because when Charlie takes the money, he goes out to buy paints. Now Tom has a little time. Tom goes up the fire escape, breaks in. It's the summer. The windows are actually open. It's not hard to break in. And he sees the paintings. This is a scene I can write. This is a scene that makes sense now. It's got a series of escalations building to the dramatic choice, the action. And they do talk, but they talk in an unusual way that heightens the drama. It also limits the conversation. It's got to be more powerful because it's through the door. It's more intense. That it was the series of questions. I hope it was clear. I tried to make clear that what I do is I just pick a single element, just one thing. How does he talk to Charlie? Well, he can talk through the door. He can wait on the street. He can get him to come out to the stairway. And I think about those choices, and usually one will sort itself out. Of the possibilities, talking through the door, which was not on the agenda at first, I was like, well, if he talks to him, he's either got to make him come out to the stairs or he sees him on the street. Neither of those felt right. And then because I was asking the question, a new possibility arrived. It occurred to me, oh, wait, he could talk through the door. So that's the way the process works, is that you ask a very specific question. How do these two guys talk in a way that will be dramatic and interesting? And you sort through some possibilities. You choose one. Okay, now he talks, but he doesn't go through the door. Then I was like, well, I have another question then. How does Tom get in if Charlie won't go out? And then I thought, well, what would make Charlie go out? He's not going to go out. I mean, yeah, he could go out to get some, like some bread and coffee or something. But the whole point is that he doesn't do that for days at a time. And therefore, Tom would have to be hanging out, staked out for days at a time, which doesn't really make sense, because how would he know that he was ever going out? Like it's one of those things that would feel like it was for the convenience of the story. But then I thought, the thing that Charlie would go out for is paint. He says he needs paint more than food. That is A, really, really a cool insight into Charlie, and B, and I don't know where it comes from, but as I'm sitting there thinking this question, how are we going to get Charlie to go out? The paint, he's going to ask for money and Tom will slip it under the door. It just comes to you. It comes to you if you ask specific questions, not how does this scene work or what's going to make this good. Those are not useful questions. Useful questions are, how do we get Charlie to leave? How do we get Tom to know that Charlie will leave the place? That's a very specific thing. How can he know this thing is going to happen? This is the process of questions. very specific questions. And there were like 5 different questions to this one scene. What about the eviction notice? What is he going to do about it? Things like that. Each one has to be answered. The more specific you get, because now I had 2 visits, one where there's no eviction notice, one there's another. That means there has to be a difference. He can't go and talk to Charlie through the door twice. So once, Charlie won't answer. The second time, because of the eviction notice, Tom won't let it go. He provokes Charlie to talk. This is the idea of very, very simple questions and exploring possible answers. And then one of them will just make sense. It becomes easier the more you do it. For a while, you'll be like, I don't know if that's right. After a while, the answer comes to you, and literally, it's like this. It's like this. What is he waiting? Oh, wait, I got it. And I just had it. I was like fully there. Okay, so let me do a quick check of our messages. Okay. Comments. Hi, Izzy. Haven't been to one of these in a while. I am glad to see you, Izzy. Very, very nice to have you here, to have you back. Hi, Pelicans. Yagamichi. If one is so dedicated to work that one doesn't even eat, I highly doubted he would even care if someone came. Yes, exactly. Well, the important thing about this is that this is the story of this relationship between these 3 people, Tom, Charlie, and Billy. They have a very intense relationship. And so would he care if someone came? No. The first time, he won't even answer the door. The second time, Tom is pushing at that. He's saying, I know you don't care. I know you're in here. Charlie, do you know there's an eviction notice? That kind of thing. In other words, he is pushing at Charlie to the point that Charlie can't let it go. As to the, I doubt if he would do it. Well, the magic of writing fiction is you make people do what you think they will. There isn't a right answer. Not all people will do one thing or another. So the question is, can I believably motivate Charlie to talk a little bit? And that's why the through the door symbolizes the reluctance of Charlie to fully open up. But at the same time, Tom is the only one who knows what he's doing. In Charlie's life has devolved to the point that he has this one friend who earlier in the story, he confessed his quest, his vision of what kind of art he wanted, and then he discovered it. And so Tom has sort of been in on the quest. So it is possible that Charlie would talk to him for a few minutes. Hi, Donna. Hello, Marcus. Michael says, when an artist feels nobody believes in their art, he loses purpose, becomes self-destructive and a little paranoid. Maybe an artist feels everyone hates him. Yeah, there's many possibilities. You have to remember that this is not, every character is different. Every person is different. I am telling the story of a particular person named Charlie, and Charlie Tinker has a story, and I know the full story of Charlie. So when I am talking about a specific scene, I'm not figuring out who Charlie is. I'm figuring out how this scene can happen since I know who Charlie is and where in his story he is and where Tom is. In other words, these are not, the possibilities are not fully open. When you're writing a story, every choice you make forces you to remove certain possibilities. In other words, once you make a choice, certain of the many, many options you have fall away. And then you have a few options. This is the beauty of making choices. This is the whole point of the process of writing, is that once you have made one choice, your infinite possibilities, which is a terrible thing to face. Infinite possibilities is the worst thing an artist can face. So what you're trying to do is say, okay, in this scene, there's this guy, and I know his arc up to now, and I even know where he's headed. So I know exactly what this one moment is for him. So within that one moment, I will have 4 or 5 possibilities of variations on how he can do this thing. And the answer is what he's doing is responding to an old friend, his closest friend, worried about him. So that's the answer, if it was a question. Izzy says, I love the moment when I realize that a tricky problem I have is actually an opportunity for a dramatic and compelling scene. Me too, Izzy. That's why I am doing this live stream, because earlier this week I hit one of those and it was compact enough. It was like I could just explain the whole thing, that it within, a couple of pages of notes, I went from a vague scene to a specific scene. And I thought, oh, I love that feeling. I love this feeling so much. It is when you know you are writing, is when you have something that's vague or frustrating or confused, and you work on the specifics until they begin to lock into place, and that's what you want to write. Is it the only choice? No. Is it the best choice? Who the hell knows? It doesn't matter. What matters is it locks in. You just say, oh yeah, I now see step 1, step 2, step 3. I see the action, and each action has an emotional and narrative power because it's a unique thing. Banging on the door and getting no response, that's a unique moment. I don't need to, it's not the whole story. It's a moment at this turning point where Tom has been, frankly, abandoned by Charlie. Tom has been in trouble. Tom has figured out a good way to live without Charlie, and he's worried about Charlie, so he goes back. That's what that moment is. It's very specific, and that is what I urge you to take away from this. Be very, very specific. You don't have to solve everything. You just have to solve this one moment. And ask as many questions as occur to you about that moment and come up with specific answers. That's the thing. That is the game, the name of the game. Hey, Hasko, not the pirate. That's okay. I'm glad that you were working out. It's very important to take care of our bodies and our health. Adam says, hi, Glenn. That example of driving logical escalation through character drive and to talking through the door was a great example. Thank you. Do you find enough energy left in the scene to actually write it? No, no, honestly, this is what happens. I will write these notes, and this one, I worked for a while and I got the notes that I got, and then I said, oh, and I was excited and I stopped. Now, when I am pushing harder, I will move to another scene. I won't keep going on that one. I'll move to another one. I'll come back to that one later. Then the next day I came back to it and I answered another piece of it. When I had at the end of the 2 days, the full outline of this scene, and this is crazy. I have a full outline of a page and a half, but I have a full outline because it's like 4 or 5 steps in this page and a half that I'm going to write. And I had a very, very rough version of it, which was like I went by, the loft and I looked up at the windows and I, was trying to figure out if Charlie was there. It was vague. So now what I did is on the 3rd day, today actually, I opened up the scene and I started to just hammer out the roughest, vaguest, but specific version of, I went by Charlie's place. I couldn't tell if he was there. I waited until I could get into the building and I banged on the door. He didn't answer. I left. I wrote that all. So I wrote that rough draft and then I stopped again. Tomorrow, well, actually some other day, I'll go back and I'll start to sharpen it up and sharpen it up. But do I have the energy at the moment I come up with the outline? Usually not. Usually I can switch to another thing, but I can't keep working on that specific moment. Hello, Yigit. Is that how I pronounce it? I hope so. Thank you. You are very welcome to be here. I apologize. Something caught in my throat. Do you find you have enough energy left in the scene to actually write after knowing each beat? I personally like to take a break. Sometimes that's like take a break and go eat lunch and then come back, or take a break and do a little exercise or something. But for me, I need to step away and come back. But that's just me. Other people, it's like once you're on, you don't want to stop, like Charlie. Okay, Steed says, hi, just got out of my writer's class. No problem. Can someone catch me up on what we're talking about? Yes, we are talking about two things. The first thing has been, and feel free to watch this on replay later, I took a scene, a single scene from the novel I'm working on, which was important, actually a very, very crucial scene, but very, very vague. I knew what I had to have happen, but I didn't know how to make it work out. And I took you through the questions I asked myself. Why is this person doing this? How does this person get this? And I answered all those questions. What I did was spent about 20 minutes just going through every step of my thinking, from a scene which was vague but important to 5 or 6 beats in this scene that I could understand and that fit the story as a whole. So that's what we are doing. Now I'm going to talk about a bigger choice that I have to make. First, I'm going to say, hey, oh, good. Yeah, you get was correct, I hope. Thank you. Found you wearing film courage and helped. I'm so glad. I really appreciate that when people tell me that I have been useful, because honestly, I worry that this is just a narcissistic, self-indulgent, foolish, useless thing that I am doing. So when people say to me, oh no, this actually did help, because it helped. I'm telling you things that helped me. Like in the past 2 days, I really felt like, yeah, this scene sucks. And then by the end of the 2 sessions of work, I felt like, oh, it's so exciting. As Isabel said, it's so exciting when you solve a small specific problem, when you go from a theory to concrete, because concrete is what you write. Concrete is words describing a specific moment and a specific emotional action. That's what I was trying to convey, is how mechanical it is, how detailed, and especially how the way, at least that I believe you do it, is by asking questions in writing. Like, I believe you have to, personally, you do better if you actually write your questions to yourself, and that is why I am showing you my actual notes and the questions. How does Tom know? What does he do? That's the point, is to actually write down your questions in talking to yourself. Yes, you could just think about it. There's something about putting it on a page that helps, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so let me talk very briefly about the other topic I have so that I don't lose it, and then we will get back to questions. The other topic I have is about quotation marks. All right. So here's what happened. The shape of this book is that it is supposedly a memoir handwritten by the character Tom when he is elderly, remembering these events from the 1930s and 40s. And he writes them in a school notebook, one of those composition books. There's 4 composition books in which the story is written. Those 4 books are the bulk of this novel. In between each of the books, there's a little description, a little section about how people find these books after Tom has, we don't know what has happened to Tom. So there's 5 little intersections between the text about who finds these notebooks and what they do with them. So that's the shape of the book. Therefore, almost all of this book is supposedly Tom handwriting his memories, his memoir, into these notebooks. Now, the thing is, yes, absolutely, some people write their memoirs and they write dialogue. They write, he said this, I said that. But there's something that's been bothering me all along about going into quoted dialogue, scenes, in this memoir. Now, 2 of my favorite books do this thing. One is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The other is called The End of the Affair by Graham Greene. Both of them are supposedly written by the narrating character telling the story of something that happened to them in the past. They are telling you a story, and in that, but as they tell it, they write it like a novel. And that was sort of on my mind as the shape I was going to use. But it kept bugging me. I just didn't think Tom, even though Tom has some literary pretensions, I just didn't think of him as writing scenes with dialogue. It just didn't make sense. So I kept wanting to take that dialogue out, but I thought it's not going to be fun to read. So I was reading some books by E.L. Doctorow. E.L. Doctorow is one of the great 20th century novelists who tends to write historical fiction, but historical literary fiction. He wrote Ragtime, Billy Bathgate, Loon Lake, Book of Daniel. These are all extraordinary historical fiction, often told first person. He wrote a book called Homer and Langley, which is about these two crazy characters in New York. They were hoarders. They were these very well-off guys who lived in a mansion on Fifth Avenue and went insane, and they lived in this house. They had a car inside the house. They had so many stacks of newspapers and bundles of old magazines and stuff that eventually one of them was killed by a pile of newspapers falling on them. Anyway, so he wrote a novel through the voice, like a memoir of one of Homer and Langley, these two brothers. And in it, there are no quotation marks. And I was like, okay, he's doing exactly the thing that I am afraid to do. And I thought, damn, I should try it. Like this is a working example of how you do it. And right after that, I found out that the book The Sympathizer, a marvelous novel about a Vietnamese spy during the right after the Vietnam War. It was recently made into a limited series on HBO, which I watched, and I thought, damn, that's a great story. I wonder what the book's like. So I looked at the book. Once again, it's in the form of a written confession by the main character. And so he writes his story, but he does not write quoted dialogue. He writes the dialogue. In both Homer and Langley and The Sympathizer, there are moments when the characters talk to each other, but they simply do it without quotation marks. And I was like, look, you can do this. It's not something I feel comfortable doing. It's not something I would, like, frankly, it would turn me off if I looked at a book and saw that it was that way. But I thought, I think I just need to try this. And then I mentioned this to a writer friend, and he said, you know, Sally Rooney writes that way. Sally Rooney wrote Normal People and a bunch of other bestsellers, and I realized I had read a book by Sally Rooney, and in fact, she does the same thing. No quotation marks. And then I remembered that Cormac McCarthy's No Country for Old Men also. So I have, never mind, they're on the shelf. But I remembered that No Country for Old Men, that in fact, I think all of Cormac McCarthy's books have no quotation marks. So I was like, okay. And this was about 6 weeks ago, right after New Year's. My notes on that were on January 2nd that I raised the question in my notes. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do this. But I don't know how, but I know that like there's 4 solid examples, like best-selling literary fiction that does exactly this thing. So I have these 4 books to look at and see how they pull it off technically. So I was like, all right, how am I going to do it? Here I can show you some notes. This is just notes that I copied and pasted. I think I just need to take a deep breath and do it. As I go through it, the big fear is, how am I going to make the scenes play as scenes without quotations? And I just wrote, I guess I'll have to figure this. That's what I wrote. So then a couple days later, what I decided to do was not overthink it. I just made I saved a copy of the book with the quotation marks, and in the rough draft it was. And then I said, all right, I'm going to go through scene by scene and do nothing but remove quotation marks. And it took me about 4 or 5 days to go through the entire text and remove every single quotation marks. But I left the dialogue just as it was. Now, it's not gonna stay that way, but it was the first step. Just like clear the decks, get this, try and look at it in this new way. The first thing I noticed was how much I was writing dialogue as you would write dialogue in a movie, which is what I'm used to writing, or in most novels, they try to capture the flow of conversation. And so there's a lot of filler. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of playfulness. It's wonderful to write that way. It's how I'm used to writing. But this doesn't work that way. In this, you want to take just the gems, just the hottest, sweetest, most powerful lines, the little exchanges of dialogue, and use them. But don't use filler. Don't use flow. Just the juicy parts. Everything else is summary and it's building up to it. So that's what I've been doing, is now I'm just going through, and as I get to each scene, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, without quotation marks, I don't want to do this 3 or 4 introductory lines. I want to just get to, I'm waiting at the, through the door. I'm talking, I banged on the door, and finally Charlie said, I said, Charlie, I'm not going away until you talk to me. And then he says, like, I can't talk to you, Tom, or something. But whatever it is, that line could stand out as a paragraph by itself, without the, ordinarily I would write the flow of a dialogue. Now I'm just choosing the kicker lines. So that was the other big thing. I have no idea if this will work, but I feel like once I commit to it, once I really work on, like, okay, what is the oomphiest, the powerful lines in this, like what exchange of dialogue will really just knock you out when you read them as this moment of speech within the flow of memory. So that's the other thing I want to talk about, is just this big decision in which I am going way out of my comfort zone. Okay, so let me do some comments. Izzy says, I'm a big inspiration. Thank you. Practical advice, but reminding me what I like about my writing. So I actually get off. Yes. Okay. Izzy is bringing up a very good point, and I really think this is important. So much of writing advice talks about what's wrong and how to fix it and what to fear. And members of my family will tell you that this is unusual for me. But in terms of writing, I believe you have to not dwell on what could go wrong. You have to not dwell on what you fear. You have to dwell on what you like. You have to dwell on what's fun. You have to be willing to jump off the cliff and just fly. In real life, that I would never say do that. But in writing, yeah, you have to just focus on, if there's, there's a quote I heard from Degas, the painter, the French Impressionist painter. And he said, if you have a racehorse, because he used to paint a lot of racetrack scenes. He said, if you have a racehorse with one bad leg, you shoot it. But if you have a painting with one good corner, you save it. And I thought that's the point. You have to start looking for the one nice thing, the one cool thing that you've done, and say, okay, I've got that. I can build from there. I can see what it is from there. Or, well, that's the best that's going to be. I'll do another one. But you remember that you did something good. Okay. Steed says, I'm working on a 13-episode series. Most of it is working. Main character seems to drop out and do nothing in Act 2. What questions do you ask to get him moving and figure out what is going wrong? That is a great question. Well, first of all, you're saying Act 2, but it's a 13-episode series. So my first question is, are they dropping out of a single episode in Act 2? Because that really wouldn't necessarily, depending on what's going on and what the shape of the series is as a whole, that's not the worst thing. If you're calling Act 2 like the middle, 5 episodes, yes, that's a problem. So the answer for the questions I would ask first are literally, what is he doing? Like, why am I not seeing him? What is he not doing things? And if he's not doing things, obviously somebody's doing something because you're writing episodes. So who's taking over? And the question then becomes, is this something you want to, how am I going to solve that my main character has gone quiet? Do I want to intercut what he's doing? Do I want to give some of the stuff that other people are doing? In other words, what I would do is always I ask the question, how do I fix it my main character's gone quiet in the middle of the story? And then I think every possible answer, and I write them down. Get rid of another character to move their stuff over to them. Add things for the main character to do. You know, you'd have to be more specific about, like, why is he, literally, if he's your main character, why is he not there? What's happened to him? Is he being held away? What the question is, why is he not there? And then the answers will provide other questions. The key about asking questions is whatever question you ask, it's going to give you a single step. That step then asks more questions. The question is something that you get a small answer to, and that provides more questions. What you really want is more questions until the problem goes away. Okay. Oh, actually, your series is set in 1947, 1951 Hollywood. Cool time. Very interesting. Yes. Robert Downey is in The Sympathizer. Not only is he a sympathizer, he plays like 4 or 5 characters, and he does it brilliantly. And they're minor characters, which is very impressive because he produced the whole thing. Anyway, Bukowski, Burroughs, Naked Lunch, no quotation marks, if I remember right. Yes, I am. Oh, really? Marquez, The Autumn of the Patriarch. Interesting. But they're all very particular. Well, that's okay. I want to be particular too. That's all right. But it is great to hear those. I will take a note of that to see, because sometimes you just look at things and are like, how do they do that? You know, it's like if you're writing a race movie, like racetrack, like car racing, you just look at every single car racing movie you can think of. I am doing a non-quotation mark novel. I'm going to look at every non-quotation story I can just to see how they do it. Like, you know, literally, mechanically. Do they say he said colon, or do they put he said after it with the comma? Like, the main thing I'm going to be looking for is the flow, the steering of the mind into the moment. Okay. May be helpful to think of it the way someone else would tell you about a long conversation they had. They don't recite every word. This is exactly right, Steve. This is exactly what I'm coming to. My main character is telling you the story, and he obviously is not going to go into every detail. He is going to take the choicest, most powerful moments and try to give voice to those, but then he will use summary in between them. That is it. Excellent points, Izzy. Sometimes we get so caught up in the formulas and rules we forget to love it. Yes, exactly right. That is true. Okay, answer to my question. The whole 13 series. So yes, the middle 5 episodes. That's what I figured. Yeah. So the answer is the questions you want to ask about why your main character is literally, why is my main character dropping out of the story? Is it that he's busy somewhere? Is it that you're trying to keep something secret? I can't tell the answers, but you're going to say, oh, well, I sort of had him lie low because I wanted him to come out of the blue later, or something. Well, that's what you need to do in that case, is say, well, how can I keep him active but still conceal his activity, or that kind of thing. All right, he's a very introverted character. He's unhappy, so he's just sort of shut down. The question then is, how can I make him doing things even though he is unhappy? Or if you really, really want to have a character who's shut down, my question is, what is his action when he is shut down? Is he thinking? Is there any way to dramatize what he's thinking? Like you could literally show, and this once again, you spew out every possibility. Is he writing a diary? Is there voiceover? Are there little fantasy sections where we see what he wishes he could do? Or if he's really, really a character who shuts down, maybe he's not fully the main character. Maybe you've got an ensemble where other people take over the story. I can't tell the answers, but I can tell you the question is, how can I tell this story if a character is shut down? That's the question. You're going to have to come up with possible answers. Some of them are going to fall away. Some of them are going to be interesting, but they're going to bring up more questions. Most stories I write are present tense, but telling it is past tense. That's true of anything in the past tense. I've been criticized for seeing they're important later rather than now. I hope that makes sense. Yes. Yeah. Anything, like if you find that you are putting scenes in that are going to be important later, you have to, once again, ask the question, how can I make this appear to be important now, but conceal the thing that's going to pop up later? In other words, rather than just have it be kind of dull so that it's useful later, you have it be interesting in one way with a secret cargo that you're also putting in. Okay. Racing movies are okay, but what about wrestling movies? Well, there happen to have been some good wrestling movies. There's a recent one called The Iron Claw. And way back in the 70s, Henry Winkler did a movie, I think it was called The Greatest or something, about a guy who so desperately wanted to be famous that he becomes a professional wrestler. It's actually not bad, if I remember. It's been a long time since I saw it. Anyway, the point is there are good wrestling movies. Okay. Yes, keep asking questions about him. What else is going on? I mean, that's the main question, is what else is going on? Can he be involved in any of it? And if not, the question is, why is it, like, just to being introverted? Yes, you can have a person be introverted. You can't necessarily have them be the main character unless you are going to do something to play with their introversion to make it part of the story. Bearded Screenwriter says, thanks again for your insight/tips. You are very welcome. On my latest feature script draft, I started asking on page, why? Why is this character doing this? How? When? Yes. How does it tie in? Yeah, exactly. Write it, you can write it on the page, you can write it in the outline, you can write it in notes, wherever it is, but writing down very specifically why, how, when, what is the point of this? Ask yourself as many questions as you can. Yeah, Steed says, in the first draft, just write anything. Yes, absolutely. There are no realize. Sorry, Barton Finkra. Yes. You see, Barton was wrong about some things. Barton is an interesting guy, but it's not like he doesn't have some things to learn, as we will see in the course of Barton Fink. Okay, let's go back to Mark Burton's initial question, because we're going to be shutting down. I'm going to be stopping in about 7 minutes, so thank you so much for the questions. Let me just answer this question. Do I have a video on how to enhance a sequel over the first story? I do not. Partly because I've never done that. Partly because no one ever asked. The main thing I think about sequels is it depends on whether you're doing something that is commercial and therefore has had a request for a sequel, or whether you're just doing a series of things. Because there's very different elements at play. If you are working on a commercial thing that was popular enough to have a sequel, you are going to be getting a lot of pressure from a lot of influences, producers, studios, all these people who are involved, who have very specific things they want out of a sequel. To me, the biggest issue with sequels is how often they are essentially just trying to repeat the initial one. For me, that's bad. The good sequels, and there are some good sequels, are either ones that really, really do some kind of change, some kind of variation, some kind of progress in the story of this person who was in the first one and now is in the second one, or something that literally sort of attacks the first one. I personally think that the Joker sequel, Folie à Deux, is brilliant because it attacks the first movie. It is not a sequel in any satisfying commercial way, but I think artistically it's actually brilliant, because what it does is it asks you to question why on earth you liked the first one. But on the other hand, you have something like Godfather Part 2, which is tricky because the sequel was built into the original novel. In other words, the original novel was a long, epic story. The original movie, they took a section from the middle. So what Coppola did was he said, if I am going to do a sequel, which I don't want to do, but if I am, the only way I want to do it is to do the two other things, the before and the after. And in order to do the before and the after, he intercut them, showed the influence of the before on the after. That was a genius choice as far as I'm concerned. It put him in a bad state when he had to do Godfather 3. By the way, if you ever get a chance, the DVD commentary, I don't know where you would find it if you don't have a DVD player, but the DVDs of the restored version of the Godfather trilogy, Coppola does commentary tracks that are fascinating. But other sequels, I mean, if you're having a series which you are developing, one of the things you want to do is often what Hollywood will say is, we want this to be the same but bigger. And that can work for a while. After a while, you'll just be too big. Like, if yes, if they had to save the city, now they have to save the country. And in episode 3, they have to save the world. At a certain point, though, it's just too big. I rather liked what the Die Hard series did for the first 4. After that, it fell apart. But the first 4 were actually, for instance, the sequel to Die Hard was conscious that it was an outrageously improbable sequel. And I think they did a good job. And then the third one is taking elements of the first one as part of the story. In other words, there's a character in the third one who is essentially taking revenge for events that happened in the first one. Those are all cool ways to make something not just churning out the same thing again and again. Okay. Let me check the comments and then I'm going to say goodbye. So no more comments. Okay. Mo Yamani says, how do you create arguments and tension between characters without making any of them look like the bad guy? Well, here's a tricky thing. First of all, the point about it really suggests you look at two or three videos of mine. One, character. We'll talk about how to define the character and character arcs, because the point about any arguments between characters is it's coming from where they are in the story. They are arguing because they want something and they're in conflict with someone, or having to manipulate or get on their side someone else. But the main way I would say to look at it is look at the dialogue video. In my lesson videos, character and dialogue, these are very important. The main issue with an argument between characters, tension between characters, is that they have to have a reason, like if they have a legitimate reason for what they want, even if it's not going to win the day, they will not necessarily seem like a bad guy. If you can show, what makes a bad guy? Partly how they treat each other. In other words, you can have tension between characters without them being mean to each other. They can just be trying to communicate. They could be desperately trying to communicate. They could be trying to entice. There's so many ways that people deal with their tensions beyond just being angry at each other. Not all conflict is aggression. And there are many things that go on in dialogue. So I urge you to look at my video on the subject of dialogue. That's where I would say. But the main way that you do it is give each person a legitimate plan, a legitimate goal, something that they want, or that they are trying to do, that at least somewhat you can believe in the Marvel movies. Thanos, is Thanos? Yeah, Thanos. He's in 2 of the Marvel movies. He's a bad guy, but he actually has an argument. And he's a terrible he's a monster, but he has an argument, which is, if I do not do this, the universe is going to fall into chaos because there are too many people. Okay. Steed tells me that the character's introversion is definitely part of the story. Good. Fish out of water, very isolated, has to learn to branch out. Yes. Okay. Well, that's the point. Then your story is, what are the steps? What are what is he trying to do? With all of these questions, I hope, if you have not watched this video, the 6 essential questions, I urge you to, because the question becomes, what is the character trying to do? If someone is introverted, they are not pushing away. They're actually actively trying to do something else, to get some calm or quiet, to avoid getting hurt, to protect a habit that they have. Whatever it is, they have some goal that they are trying to accomplish. And the question becomes, if that way of working and what they need to do in life, like they're very introverted, but they need to become, to save the city's water system, they're going to have to deal with other people. It's going to come into conflict with their introversion. Then they're going to take steps. Let me see if I can write it down and pass it to them. Let me see if I can tell someone else and have them do it. Whatever it is, they're going to take actions. So those are the ways that I would start to look at it, is what actions are they taking? If you don't know what I mean by actions, please look at this video, Dramatic Action. I will, after this video is done in minutes, about 10 minutes later, I will try and put links to these videos in the description so you can just click on them and see what I'm talking about. Okay. Thank you, Steed. I am very glad you asked interesting questions. Everyone asks interesting questions. Yes. Steed is saying, most of the sequels I can think of feel like they took the first script and just changed a few words. Yes, that's why the good ones are 21 and 22 Jump Street. Great. They did not, they managed to do the same thing, but they are actually conscious, and in the dialogue they are making references to the fact that they are doing a sequel. It's quite meta and quite fabulous. Okay. I agree about Joker 2, but realize why some didn't like it as a sequel. Well, yeah. As a sequel, it is insulting to anyone who liked the first one. Yes. Oh, cool. Anyway. Jokes page by page, really exhausting. Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2, yeah. But Deadpool and Wolverine, I thought, managed to do pretty well. I had a good time. You are welcome, DG. I appreciate it. Hasco, thank you. Okay. Yes, definitely check it out. I believe 6 Essential Questions is literally essential. And then Izzy says to Mo, I have this issue too. I'm reworking one of my characters from square one to avoid them seeming like the bad guy because I see them as morally gray. Yes, truly, the way I believe that you create characters, please do look at character and character arcs. But the key to making us care about a character is to understand what they are trying to do and why they are trying to do it. Almost always, they will have a good reason. Or if not, it will be fun that they have a bad reason. Those are my thoughts. Take care. I hope you all have a fabulous week and that you will all go write something.